The House of Shadows. When Chioma first set foot on Italian soil, she thought she had finally crossed the finish line of her suffering. The desert, the camps, the boat ride through death, all of it was behind her. She whispered a prayer of thanks, believing that her father's spirit must have carried her through the waves. But Italy was not the land she had imagined. It was not streets paved with opportunity. It was not the smiling arms of freedom. Instead, it was a house of shadows, ruled by the same man who had promised her light. Jude met her at the shore with a smile that seemed rehearsed. He hugged her tightly, whispered, "You made it, my lioness." But the warmth in his eyes was gone. His hands gripped her too firmly, his words too shallow. He ushered her quickly away before the authorities could notice. To Chioma, it felt more like an abduction than a rescue. The house he took her to was not a home, it was a fortress. The windows were barred, the doors always locked. Inside, the walls were bare, the air heavy with silence. She noticed immediately there were no neighbors close enough to hear a cry for help, no friendly faces to welcome her. It was isolation, deliberate and complete. The first thing Jude did was take away her phone. The same phone he had given her months earlier. The very gift that had symbolized freedom and connection. He smashed the SIM card before her eyes and dropped the phone in the trash. "You don't need this anymore," he said coldly. "You have me now." Chioma's heart sank. At first, she thought perhaps he was just being protective, afraid the authorities might trace her. But the days that followed revealed the truth. She was not a partner, not a wife-to-be, not even a guest. She was property. Jude's moods swung like a pendulum. At times, he was charming, telling her stories of his childhood, of how hard life had been for him too. But more often, he was cruel. He barked orders at her, demanded silence, and lashed out when she hesitated. Nights were the worst. Behind locked doors, he became a different man entirely, a man who saw her body not as hers, but as something he owned. Chioma's cries meant nothing. Her protests, her tears, her pleas for mercy, all were swallowed by the four walls. Jude silenced her with threats, with fists, with a kind of coldness that could freeze a soul. It wasn't long before she realized she was not alone in her suffering. Jude was not acting alone. His friends, men from Benin and Imo, visited often. They spoke in hushed tones, laughed too loudly, and sometimes eyed Chioma with a hunger that made her skin crawl. It was then she pieced together the truth. This was a syndicate. A network of men who lured young women from Nigeria with promises of love, marriage, or work, only to trap them as slaves, prisoners, and tools for their dark pleasures. Chioma's dreams of Italy as a place of freedom now mocked her. She was locked inside a house where the sun seemed never to shine, her days blending into nights of terror. She tried to fight. She tried to resist, but resistance only brought more pain. Jude hit her harder, kept her without food, threatened her with worse things if she ever attempted escape. At times, she wondered if she had been cursed. How could hope turn so quickly into horror? Months dragged into a year. The toll on her body was brutal. She became pregnant 4 times. Each pregnancy a fragile spark of life that Jude extinguished with his violence. Beatings, neglect, constant abuse. Each miscarriage tore a piece of her away. She began to feel like a shell, existing, but not living. Through it all, her mother in Nigeria had no idea if her daughter was alive or dead. Letters never came. Calls never reached. Among her relatives, Chioma became a ghost, a painful memory people spoke of with pity or anger. Yet, somewhere deep inside her, the lioness stirred. It was faint, buried under layers of pain, but it was there. She knew. She could not give up, not completely. That ember of hope flickered to life when Jude, tired of his own incompetence, brought in an elderly midwife to care for Chioma during her 5th pregnancy. This time, he demanded the child be born alive. For him, it was not love, it was legacy, a twisted sense of power. But for Chioma, it was an opportunity. The midwife was kind, unlike the men who surrounded Jude. She spoke gently, her hands steady as she checked Chioma's health. And most importantly, she had a phone. A simple, small device that connected her to the world outside the prison walls. For the first time in 2 years, Chioma touched a phone again. Her fingers trembled as she dialed a number she had memorized long ago, her mother's. "Mama." Her voice cracked, tears flowing freely as the line connected. The gasp on the other end was like oxygen to a drowning soul. "Chioma, my child, is it really you?" It was only a whisper of a conversation Jude could return at any moment. But in those few minutes, Chioma poured out her plan. She would endure until her child was born. She would pretend, obey, survive. Then, when the time was right, she would escape. Her son came into the world one rainy evening, his cries filling the house like a trumpet of hope. She named him Abel, not just because it was biblical, but because he symbolized innocence in a world soaked with blood. For 6 months, Chioma nursed her child in silence, her eyes fixed on the door, her mind calculating every possibility of escape. And when the chance finally came, when Jude grew careless, leaving his safe unlocked, she did what she had promised. She stole his money, took the phone, and vanished into the night, with her baby pressed tightly to her chest. The lioness had remembered how to roar. But the roar was not just hers. It was about to awaken the entire world. The flight to freedom. The night was dark, the air heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth. But Chioma felt more alive than she had in years. Abel, her infant son, slept peacefully in her arms, oblivious to the danger around them. Every instinct screamed at her to move quietly, carefully, to become invisible, to vanish before Jude realized what was happening. For 2 long years, Chioma had endured raped, beaten, isolated, and stripped of everything she had once held dear. Yet, the fire inside her had never truly died. And now, with Abel as her anchor and the stolen phone as her lifeline, she was ready to reclaim the one thing that mattered, her freedom. Her heart pounded as she crept down the narrow hallway of the house. Jude's voice had grown faint in the distance, absorbed by a phone call he did not suspect would mark the beginning of his downfall. Chioma's hands were steady now, the months of fear replaced with determination. Every step she took felt like walking across a tightrope above a pit of fire. One wrong move, and years of suffering could end in a moment. The midwife had been her secret ally. She had whispered instructions in hushed tones. "There is a safe path to the authorities. If you move tonight, you can reach them without detection. Take the money. Take your son. And never look back." Chioma had memorized every detail, every turn, every shadowed alley. By the time she reached the front gate, the world outside seemed both terrifying and promising. Freedom smelled like wet earth and hope. She ran, clutching Abel tightly, and every heartbeat was a prayer. Every breath tasted of liberation. When she finally reached the local authorities, her story spilled out like a dam breaking. She told them everything. The kidnappings, the syndicate, Jude's network, the other girls trapped in Italy. She recounted every detail, every fear, every injustice she had endured. The officers listened, incredulous at first, but the evidence she provided, the phone, the money, and her knowledge of their operations was undeniable. Jude and his accomplices were arrested swiftly. The syndicate crumbled under the weight of their own crimes, and the other young women in their captivity were freed. Chioma had not only rescued herself, but had become the key that unlocked the prison for dozens of others. The days that followed were overwhelming. Chioma received medical care, counseling, and support from Italian authorities. Abel was healthy, his bright eyes a constant reminder that life could bloom even in the harshest conditions. Slowly, she began to understand that her story, horrific as it had been, could inspire and educate. She spoke to journalists, advocacy groups, and organizations dedicated to rescuing trafficking victims. Her courage became a beacon for those still trapped in darkness. Financial stability followed unexpectedly. Chioma. Careful and wise. Accepted. Determined to use it to secure a future for Abel and herself. For the first time in years, she could breathe without the constant weight of fear pressing on her chest. But Chioma did not forget her family. After securing Abel and herself, she called her mother. Tears of joy and relief flowed freely as they spoke. "Mama, we are coming home," she said, her voice trembling with happiness. She sent money, ensured her siblings were safe, and slowly rebuilt the fractured pieces of the family they had once been. Returning to school became her next mission. Chioma enrolled when Abel turned 5, determined to reclaim the education that had been stolen from her. She studied relentlessly, her determination fueled by years of lost opportunity. The girl who had once dreamed of lifting her father's workshop into greatness now sought to build her mind, to create a life that could never again be stolen others. Financial stability followed unexpectedly. Publishers, filmmakers, and storytellers sought her story, offering compensation that seemed unreal after years of suffering. Chioma, careful and wise, accepted, determined to use it to secure a future for Abel and herself. For the first time in years, she could breathe without the constant weight of fear pressing on her chest. But Chioma did not forget her family. After securing Abel and herself, she called her mother. Tears of joy and relief flowed freely as they spoke. "Mama, we are coming home," she said, her voice trembling with happiness. She sent money, ensured her siblings were safe, and slowly rebuilt the fractured pieces of the family they had once been. Returning to school became her next mission. Chioma enrolled when Abel turned 5, determined to reclaim the education that had been stolen from her. She studied relentlessly, her determination fueled by years of lost opportunity. The girl who had once dreamed of lifting her father's workshop into greatness now sought to build her mind, to create a life that could never again be stolen by others. And love, when it came, arrived gently. A man, responsible and kind, entered her life not with promises, but with steady support, patience, and care. Chioma, who had known the depth of human cruelty, now knew the joy of human kindness. She married him, with Abel by her side, and at last, a chapter of true peace began to unfold. Chioma's journey had been long, cruel, and full of suffering, but it was also a testament to the strength of the human spirit. She had faced death, betrayal, and unimaginable cruelty, and she had survived. She had not only freed herself, but had brought light to others trapped in darkness. And as she looked at Abel, playing in the garden, she whispered quietly to herself, "The lioness has roared again, and this time she will never be silenced." This concludes the arc of Chioma's survival, escape, and triumph over adversity.